Welcome to the Plant-Based Podcast. Did you know that plants are truly amazing? Not only can you grow them and eat them, you can also wear them, drink them, nourish your skin with them, and so much more. Let Ellen and Michael inspire you to love plants as much as they do, as they chat with the movers and shakers in this wonderful plant-based world. So, let's dig in.
The tranquil, soothing, natural sound of flowing water. Listening to it has been shown to lower your heart rate and blood pressure and generally relax your whole body. Combining the magical sound of cascading water with the beauty of plants, Hydria Life will now enable you to use those same health and well-being effects at home or in the garden. Get 10% off their rechargeable Hydria fountain at hydrialife.com. All you need to do is quote the code PLANT24 when ordering. Hey guys, we're here today with someone who we've nicknamed the Queen of Compost. Kate Turner is a skilled horticulturalist who's been working with compost formulations and giving customer advice on compost for many years. So we thought it would be the right time to get her on the podcast to talk about all things dirty. So, welcome to the podcast, Kate. How are you doing?
Hi, thanks so much for having me on. I love talking all things dirty.
We can imagine.
Well, Compost Kate, welcome to the podcast. I guess we better start right at the beginning, hadn't we? Like, tell us about you and your career. Did you get into horticulture at a young age? Let's go for it.
How long have you got? So I feel a bit, I'm not one of these that said, from an early age, I was in the garden with my grandparents, tending their allotment or whatever. I have no recollection of early garden memories apart from my grandmother and her gooseberry bushes and making gooseberry fool. My mum was not a gardener. My dad was not a gardener. I lived in a nice little part of the world, in the country, in a little village with a lovely garden. I didn't appreciate it as a kid. I could not wait to get to London. So I moved to London at 18 and wanted to be an actress. Basically, I did dance and drama. I did mime, I did circus, but I always ended up playing the children because I'm so short. So I ended up playing kids. I wanted to be Lady Macbeth. No, I was always the kid. Long story short, I kind of had a bit of a life change and I moved away to Scotland, became a bit of a hippie, did a bit of roadie bashing, got into the mountains, got into nature, well-being, loved it, came back and I did a lot of drama therapy with special needs. So, and there was gardening groups within that. It's quite a different background. And then I was just a bit personal, if you don't mind, but I was told that I could never have children. And so what hit me was actually, if I can't grow children, I'm going to grow plants. I'm going to grow seeds.
That's lovely.
And it sounds a bit silly. And there was a job going in Brighton where I was living as a parks gardener. And I started working as a parks gardener, looking after the bowling green, collecting the tennis money, strimming all day long, which I loved. It made me feel really butch, which I'm not. And it just evolved from there. And I just loved it. This is where I want to be. And acting out the window, and I just wanted to garden. And then I became an acting head gardener and then became a head gardener at a big public school, kind of trained on the job. And then totally out of the blue, I fell pregnant. And I now have a 19-year-old.
Twist.
Oh, wow. We were not expecting that to drop in there.
Okay.
Totally. I know. So it's completely mad. I was a head gardener doing really well in my career. And then I get pregnant, which I was not expecting. My little boy, Jerry, he's an absolute superstar. And, I love being a mum. Moved away. And then I was living in in Rutland, which is a very interesting county, beautiful county, and working temporarily at another big public school. And Gardeners World were looking for researchers, and they were based in Birmingham. At the time, but they wanted people with a bit of TV experience, which I'd had a bit of during my acting career. And so I became a researcher and a hawk runner on Gardeners World with Toby Buckland. And then things just kind of carried on, and then I became project manager for TV makeover shows. So Love Your Garden and Garden Rescue as the first 2 series with Charlie Dimmock on Garden Rescue. But then I also ran a community garden where I lived. I lived in a big 70-acre park, and started a community garden because my love had always been gardening with people. So I had special need groups, children's groups, that kind of thing. And yeah, we did a garden with Army Wives for Hampton Court. That was great fun. So in between doing kind of contracts for TV work, I'd run this organic community garden. I then worked at a therapy garden, but then lockdown came and I lost my job. And then I saw an advert looking for a gardening guru for this big company called Evergreen Garden Care, who have a lot of brands under their umbrella. And so I did that for 3.5 years. And that is how I fell into composting.
Literally.
That just a quick snapshot there.
Literally fell into the compost heap.
Literally fell into the compost.
What I was thinking when you were saying that is how many gardeners or how many plant lovers that we speak to who've had such a varied career. Because I think that once you're completely addicted to plants or the natural world, you kind of say yes to everything and do a little bit of everything. Do you know what I mean? Because it's so fun and exciting. And that's sort of totally gone from this to this. But you've used your skills and it's always, it's been within the plant world. I see that's quite like familiar, isn't it, with people?
It is, definitely. Yeah. And I think working with people, if you can tie the two together, running workshops, which I love to do. I love sharing my skills, or just watching children pull a carrot out of the ground and just be like, wow, what is this? I mean, that is one of my passions, and just trying to share. And that's what I love about the community, is that everybody seems to be so generous and wants to share their skills and knowledge. It's really lovely. And you don't get that in the world of acting, unfortunately. It's totally opposite.
Oh, okay.
Well, I first met you at Evergreen, and you were the garden guru, and they kind of they turned to you for everything. And I could tell that you were so knowledgeable, and you had such a great way that you put across the information as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, definitely. And in this episode, we really want to dig in with a big pun into the world of compost, because of course you were working a lot with the different formulations and kind of on the cusp of the move to peat-free as well. So kind of tell us a bit about your journey into compost, and then in a minute we'll talk about kind of deeper into what compost actually is almost.
So before I joined Evergreen, my compost was literally what I did at home. I had my own compost piles, and I used to home compost, and I had this organic garden. We had chickens, and I taught people how to compost. I didn't know much about bagged compost, to be honest. I really, really didn't. So it was a bit of a baptism of fire. And I found it fascinating. I really, really did. I was very much of that, all peat compost is bad. Why can't we just ban it today? What is this hanging around? The more I found out about it, and as you said, the more I dug into it, went deeper into it, and the more I found out. But so the company I work for is one of the biggest suppliers of compost. And actually, they've been working on peat-free for 30 years. And they had the first ever bag of peat-free compost 30 years ago. But it's just not an overnight fix. It really, really isn't. So what I found out about compost and how you get peat-free, it's not just take the peat out. It really, really isn't. So it's quite a fascinating story and quite a journey. I know it doesn't sound sexy, but actually when you think about what compost is, it's not just a bag of dirt. It's the foundation, it's the building blocks of all our gardens.
So I think that's the key. That's the key, Kate. Sorry, to interrupt you, but I think what would be great is for listeners to hear from you, what is compost at the end of the day? Before we even get into kind of how peat or peat-free and all those kind of things, what is it? What's it made up of? What is it for?
Because it's not just dirt, really.
Yeah, it's not just dirt. Really. Absolutely. And actually bagged compost, peat or not, is quite a relatively modern thing. So before the 60s, people would have these loam based, these soil based, that's what they would grow plants in. You couldn't go to a garden centre and buy a plant in a container. Everything was root balled. So, you weren't buying containerized plants. So people would have heard the term John Innes. So that was developed during the war to help people grow their own food. And it was a recipe. So it was kind of soil, loam, it was peat, it was a bit of grit, and people could make their own. People would cook up their own compost in their ovens. And this term compost actually really, when we're talking about bagged compost, what we're talking about is growing media. It's a growing media. Compost actually is a verb. If you think about it, you compost. You put your garden waste in a pile, in a heap, you let it heat up. That is compost. What you actually buy in a bag isn't compost. It's a growing media. And I like that because it separates it from a bag of dirt, which I think undermines the whole reason of what a bagged compost is. It's full of so much goodness that you grow your plants in. And as I was saying, without it, you haven't got a garden. And for so many people who garden in containers, it's absolutely essential. So basically, it is a growing media for growing plants. That's kind of the simplest basis of what a bagged compost is. It's not what you have at home in your compost bin. It's a science. It's a real science what goes into these bags. Somebody doesn't just dig up a field and chuck it in a bag.
Chuck that all in a bag. However, somebody does go and dig up some peat and put it into a bag.
Absolutely.
So, for us, that's, I guess, in my gardening journey, that's the biggest change.
Yeah.
When it comes to compost that I've seen, the move to peat free. So can you just tell us a little bit about that, talk about the change and the difficulties of actually changing to peat free, and why is it necessary to change to peat free?
Yeah, so it's a massive story, really, and I'll try not to, you have to interrupt me lots to stop me going on.
This is brilliant, darling, honestly.
So many years ago, it's always been known, I think, that digging up peatland isn't that brilliant. Jeff Hamilton, who was Gardener's World presenter in the 80s, 70s, 80s, an amazing man. He stopped using peat. He's one of the first kind of people that we'd all heard of that stopped using peat. So the reason we don't want to use peat is because peat, to extract it, has to be drained. So you're draining these amazing peat bogs. And if you've ever been to a peat bog, it is just incredible. They are immense. And sometimes they are really bleak, but other times they are full of the most incredible wildlife. And the lowlands, which are the ones that are mainly extracted, are the ones that have the most diverse habitat. So by doing that, you're draining it, you're extracting it. So not only are you destroying the habitat, what we've recently found is that peatlands, peat bogs, are one of the biggest carbon sinks in the world. More than some rainforests. It's incredible how much carbon they hold. So as soon as you are extracting that peat, you are releasing all that CO2 into the atmosphere. And it just seems bizarre that we are digging up an environment to put in our garden to have our own little environment. Do you know what I mean? So we think as gardeners, we've got this lovely garden. It's beautiful. It encourages wildlife. But to get to that, we're damaging another ecosystem that is actually more important. And I know people have said that, once you put it in your garden, you're growing things, then you're storing that carbon back again. It doesn't work like that. It takes so long to renew the peatlands. So, that's the only reason I think you need. And we are talking acres and acres and acres and acres of peatland. And the harm that has been done is immense. But a lot of people didn't know that. It took a long time for people to realise that was the problem. Mm-hmm. And more people have been gardening. More and more people garden, so more and more peat has been needed.
Yeah, especially in the last few years, for sure. Just to get even more context here, where geographically are these peatlands that are being, empty?
Well, all over. Yeah. It's not just in the UK. So mainly up north. So you're talking Scotland, the north, Ireland. Ireland was massive. It was a big company called Bord na Móna, which was the Irish kind of peat body. They banned peat a few years ago, but they were a massive importer of peat. But you also get Baltic peat. So even though you're not allowed to, once the ban finally comes in and you can't extract peat anymore, people will still be importing it from Eastern Europe, so Baltic peatland as well. There are countries like Australia that don't have peat, so they've never used peat-based compost. But what I do find is interesting is that for their house plants, they actually do import peat because of the issue of fungus gnats, but we can talk about that later. But definitely the UK, I know it's been slow, and a lot of people moan about how slow it's been, this transition. We are still the leading country on peat-free, on getting rid of peat.
I do feel that when I'm out and about, especially in the Netherlands or in the US, for example, and Ellen, you can probably chime in on that as well. We've got so much awareness. I think we will touch on this as well. I think we maybe are too emotional about it sometimes. So we don't always get the message too clear, and we will talk about that as well. But first of all, like when I was a kid, my grandma, I remember she wasn't necessarily opting for it because it was peat-free, but I remember her starting to use coir compost. Right. And I don't know for what reason. Maybe it was just an alternative she'd seen out there. She gave it a go. But I think this is a good time to kind of ask, well, peat-free composts, you said earlier, it's not as easy as just taking out the peat, because not all peat-free composts are equal. And that is one of the biggest problems, isn't it? So how have peat-free composts been developed over the years? Did they initially start as just coir? Is coir a good alternative as well? What have the issues been with making that kind of like ultimate peat-free compost that gives the gardener confidence and gives the gardener green fingers too? That's
such a good question. There are massive issues here. So I always call it a bit of like, it's like a baking analogy. So a peat compost is a peat bag, but the bag of peat growing media is like a kind of a Victoria sandwich cake. You've got a couple of 2-3 ingredients. You've got your flour, butter, sugar. So you've got your peat, you've got a bit of lime in there to take away some of the acidity, and then you've got the fertilizer. So peat is a really good buffer, which means it holds onto the nutrients well and releases them at the right time. To replace peat, you've got that one big ingredient. You can't there's no magic ingredient that does what peat does. So over 30 years, good companies have been researching and developing and trialing all these different ingredients. And the problem is how do you get enough, and make sure it's sustainable? Because what you don't want to do is get rid of one environmental problem and swap it with another. So this has taken a long time. And one of the main ingredients that's being used now is wood fibre. And that is a byproduct of the timber industry. It's actually a waste product. Okay. And that actually can work really, really well. It's refined into kind of a bit like a wood wool. So it makes it really light, really fluffy. Okay. It's really good for drainage, really good for airflow. So that's one of the ingredients.
And there's lots available because it's recycled, not virgin.
It is. Right. It is. I mean, it is more expensive, and that is another issue with the peat-free compost. But so I see peat-free as a bit like a fruitcake. You've got so many different things. You've got your raisins, currants, your nuts. So getting a bag of peat-free compost is like making a fruitcake. It is harder, it's more expensive, and you need a lot more stuff to go in, and it takes longer. Before you could pretty much dig up your peat once you've extracted it and chuck it in a bag and sell it. That's not the way with peat-free compost. So you've got one of my favourite ingredients is green compost, green waste. So what people have, their street collections, you've got a brown or a green bin, and that's your garden cuttings. So it's a lovely circular way of getting compost. The problem is with green waste is that it is very rich in nutrients. So you can't have just a bag of green compost. Yeah. You can't just grow something in a pot of green compost. And the biggest problem we're having at the moment is the contamination. And I think education is the key. It's what people are putting in their green and brown bins will often end up in the bag of compost. So I don't know if you've heard social media chatter going on about plastic in their compost and bits of glass. Wire. And the thing is, a lot of compost makers will have amazing machinery. They'll have big sieves, big magnets that get everything out. But not all companies have this kind of equipment. And then also, we've had so much wet weather that a lot of the green waste has been clumping which makes it really hard to go through the sieves and hard for the magnets to detect. So, things like blades, syringes, some incredible things have been found. And the only way they get into your bag of compost is by us, the garden owners, are putting it into their green bins. So that's, a lot of people don't realise that, they blame the manufacturers, but it is an issue that has to start, educating garden owners about what they put in their brown bin. Don't put that plant label, thinking it'll get sorted. Don't put a broken black pot in your green bin. It has just got to be organic. It's got to be, plant-based, literally.
It's really interesting to hear it from your point of view, actually, because, I've had bags of compost before and it's just had all bits of wire and I don't know what else in. I just pull them out and use the compost, obviously, but I saw quite a lot of the talk online about it a couple of years ago. And there's forever the kind of discussion about what the pitfalls and benefits are of using peat-free for the grower. And that seems to be very 50-50 in what I've seen. What do you see the pitfalls of using peat are for the grower and the benefits of using it for the home gardener, that is?
Yeah, for the home gardener. Yeah. It's very much consistency, isn't it? You can get a bag of compost from the same company 1 month, which is brilliant. And then you can get another bag a month later and it doesn't really perform well. So it is getting the recipe right. So making sure, and I think it is, and I hate to say it, but it is about choosing a trusted brand, because often they're the ones that have got the research facilities. They're the ones that are doing the development. They've got the resources to do the trialing, to make sure that, the things that shouldn't be in there aren't. You're getting things like nitrogen infused wood fibre, which really helps, because otherwise, if you're just using a lot of wood-based material in your bag, then it leaches out. It leaches out a lot of the nitrogen. So if you've got it infused, that helps. I think it is just getting to know, this is probably further down the line, but for the home gardener, they just got to get to know your plants a bit more as well. And I think this is using peat-free is a really nice opportunity to become more holistic in the way you garden. It's not just bunging in a plant in a pot, hoping it looks nice. There are more things you need to do. You have to look at the way you water. That's been one of the biggest issues with peat-free, is that it tends to dry out on the top. So people think it needs watering. So then they just chuck the water on. And actually, you lift the plant out the pot and the roots will be soaking wet. That's because of all the wood fibre. The wood-based stuff kind of looks dry on the top. It settles up to the top. So always check when you water. Stick your finger in, lift your pot up. Always check. So that is getting to know your plants, and just don't have a watering routine. Don't make it Wednesday watering.
Okay.
Check. Always check. But one of the benefits of peat-free, actually, I know we can talk about the negatives, but the benefits of it re-wets really, really well. Whereas if peat dried out, really hard to rehydrate it. Whereas peat does rehydrate really, really well. So if you go away and you forget, chuck your plant in a bucket and it will soak up and it will hold on to that water really well.
But it feels like there's a market for someone to devise a really clever water indicator that you can, like a big chopstick that you could put into your pot and then know how far down it was moist. Because you said about lifting the pots and getting to know the weight of it. But like indoors, like over there, I've got some planters with houseplants in. I can't lift those up to see, so I kind of need to put my finger or put my whole hand in to see how moist it is further down. So I think an indicator would be a really, really cool idea. We could just market chopsticks for it, couldn't we?
There we go. Absolutely.
Like in the car when you test the oil.
That's it. A dipstick.
Something like that.
A watering dipstick.
Well, you can get moisture indicators, but I think you're right. We need funky ones, like.
And one that works with peat-free and kind of gives you a reliable kind of indicator of not just how wet it is, but what you need to do next as a consumer as well. Because,
absolutely.
It's great for, existing gardeners need to learn this new medium, but new gardeners are coming in completely blind. and this is maybe a little bit off course, but I think it fits in here nicely. But we've talked about kind of the grower and how they're changing, using peat free. We talked about the consumer, how they need to make the change because there's soon going to be all this available.
Yeah.
But do you think the information out there is clear enough? Because I find, like, in the UK, we've been really good at putting a lot of energy behind peat free.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's been so much energy. There are many different messages. There's many different emotions. There's social media discussions, call outs as well, dare I say. Is it clear enough, and what can we do? Because it always frustrates me that the consumer has so much information swimming around. You can't blame them if they don't know what to do.
No, absolutely. And, I think it's up to the people who are making the compost as well to really get the message straight. This brings me down. One of the issues we have is that pretty much anybody can sell a bag of peat-free compost. You could go and sweep up your floor, chuck it in a bag and say it's peat-free. I mean, it is, but it's not compost, but anyone can do that. So the HTA, which is the Horticultural Trades Association, they've been trying to get through some kind of legislation against who can produce compost, because I hate to say it, there is some rubbish out there. And if you buy cheap compost, really, you are going to get a poor result. And I don't think compost should be cheap. I really don't. I think we've undervalued compost for a long time. As I said, it's not just a bag of dirt. And I think it's educating people as to what compost is and how amazing it is and what goes into it and how much research and development. So what you don't want to do is just be buying a bag of sawdust, which can happen. But there are some really exciting developments out there. There's Digestate, which is really good. That's got a really good sustainable story. There's this whole thing about Koya. Now, Koya is a really interesting one because a lot of people are saying you're shipping it from Thailand. You have to use loads of water to wash the salts out. And I was recently speaking to a guy called Steve Harper from the RSS, which is the Responsible Sourcing Scheme. And he's he really changed my mind on Koya, actually. He really, really did. So that's quite an interesting one. So there is this scheme which has come out called the RSS, Responsible Sourcing Scheme. And it's a bit like when you buy a dishwasher and it has a rating. So A to D, so A being the best and D, E being the worst. So with compost, people can sign up to that scheme and all their raw materials are individually assessed. And they can then display that on the bag. So if you are really keen, the reason you want to go peat free is because of the environmental reasons. When you buy a bag of peat free, don't think they're all the same, because they are not. Look for this RSS logo. It's quite obvious.
Really wow.
Yeah, it's a really good scheme. But again, not many people know about it. I
started making notes. I never made notes in a podcast before.
Well, I think compost it's not seen as sexy, apart from, if you're Monty Don and you've got, 4 massive bays, and a massive garden, that's great. You can have your own compost. That's brilliant. Yeah. But most people can't, or maybe they've all got a Dalek. I've got a Dalek bin now because I've got a small garden, and a wormery. And that is that's quite a luxury. So for most people, they haven't got any other choice except to buy compost. So we really, really need to make sure that we are getting the message. I think Gardener's World, I don't want to criticize too much because I did enjoy working on it, but they've been very anti peat without giving really good alternatives.
Yeah, I feel like that's been the whole narrative across the board with the media, to be honest.
Yeah. And also I think people are really harsh with a lot of manufacturers. I used to be one of them, but when I found out how much it has cost to transition, because one of the things which we would never think about is that peat didn't need to be protected from the weather. But when you've got wood-based ingredients, Koya ingredients, they have to be inside. They have to be covered. Now, when you think of the size of football pitches full of these windrows of compost, think how much, space is needed to store those indoors, to give them some kind of cover. So that is so much more expensive. The machinery that's been needed to turn wood-based fibres into wood wool, all this thing, the infrastructure to create peat-free has been massive and been so expensive, and that is never talked about. It's like, why can't you do it tomorrow? Why can't you do it today?
But that's the thing, Kate. It's always like that, and I think call-out culture has got a lot to answer for as well, because people that spout these things online, that get the energy up, they think they're helping, but they're not really, because they don't always see the bigger picture, you know.
Absolutely. And the amount of jobs that have been lost through it, you know, I know, yes, we have to stop it, but there's all these other sides to every story. And, you know, communities that have been developed around these peat bogs, you know, you've got whole towns that had totally relied on their economy from the peat industry. So they've kind of been destroyed. So it's just not as simple as, you know, making that choice, but it has to happen. But I think Gardener's World, I would really have liked them to just do a bit more of a deep dive into it, you know, rather than what they've done. And
alternatives,
yeah,
rather
absolutely.
than telling us what's wrong, tell us what to do.
But
yes,
sometimes,
absolutely.
like, they have to think of it from the perspective that whatever they say, they're probably going to get, you know.
True.
You've got some people that are going to go crazy about it, some people who are going to agree with it, so they sort of keep themselves on the line. I guess at the very least they're saying use peat free, you know, which is
yes, absolutely.
Again, doesn't tell the consumer where to go, what to use.
But is that their job to do that? It's not necessarily their job to do that, is it?
It's not their job, but I think they could help.
But they are very prominent, so
they're very prominent. And also, you know, Monty Don, he does go on about his wonderful compost base, and I do have complete compost envy, but as I said, you know, most people don't have access to that at all. So let's have maybe the smaller presenters within Gardener's World using, you know, I know Adam Frost has done a bit. And again, he said, you got to add this, you got to add that to it. That's not always the case as well. You know, the only time I would ever maybe add something to a bag that's been prepared is with seed compost. I'd probably add maybe a bit more grit. But I would totally recommend using a seed compost for sowing seeds rather than going straight into a multi-purpose, because of the larger wood fibre pieces. That is the main thing. But actually, you know, some growers have been doing their own trials and are finding that they are getting better performance with peat free when it's used correctly. So it does work. There's trials with some plants that are actually are preferring peat free. So it's quite interesting. And I think we're not there yet either. There's still development, still research being done. And there's so many different ingredients. You've got sheep's wool, you've got bracken. As I said, you've got this digestate, which is quite a wonder material, all sorts of things. But again, it's that sustainability and finding enough supply as well. And the costs are spiraling as well, because obviously people are seeing a market for it, so they're putting their prices up. You know, that's something as well. So it's such a complex issue. It's not just a case of get rid of the peat, got this magic ingredient, I'm going to put this in a bag and then you can buy it.
But update us on the kind of, because peat was going to be banned in 1 year and then it was changed, wasn't it? Can you update us on that as well?
It's just Parliament. It's Parliament saying one thing and then,
With a lack of understanding, or do they have realism in there? What would be your...
No, it's a lack of understanding. It's totally lack of understanding. And I think without kind of changing the subject too much, horticulture has never been seen as an important industry within the UK. And I know there's people campaigning very much. I know Lee Connolly, Boyd Douglas Davis, they're all trying to campaign. They've been to the House of Lords, presented, you know, petitions, all sorts of things, working really hard towards this. And I think we just need to get horticulture taken seriously as an industry, because it makes a lot of money for the country. It really, really does.
But you know what? They have the same problem in the Netherlands as well. And when you look at that, you think, wow, that's very important.
It's a massive business.
Growers feel exactly the same. I think it's like the third biggest industry. I don't know where it ranks for us, but they feel similar.
Isn't it just not as high as that.
It is.
Horticulture is like just like it's for the environment. You know, it helps the economy, it helps
well-being,
health and well-being. It's down the list of, you know, interesting things for Parliament to talk about. It blows my mind. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's not that they've listened. It's just literally, it just kept getting pushed down. So if something doesn't get the chance to get read, then it just gets moved. And that's what's happened. It's not because we want to think about this a bit more. It's just basically we can't be bothered, really. It's changing. I think DEFRA is helping, and there was a committee from the House of Lords that came to the Garden Press event, and they really enjoyed it. And, you know, I think people it's starting to get through, but It's just not seen as a priority. It really, really isn't, which is such a shame. I mean, I was never encouraged to do anything to do with horticulture at school.
No,
I hardly know anybody.
Just discouraged would be the word.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it didn't help when David Cameron said that, go to university or you'll end up as a bin man or a gardener,
I know, honestly.
Right.
I want to smack him in the head for that.
Oh, totally.
That was very violent. But we're going to ask about...
How did I get there?
We're going to ask about formulations in a mo. But first of all, let's just touch on the growers again before we move on, because obviously it's been such a challenge for growers. But are there now growers in the UK that are confidently using peat-free 100%?
Yes, there are.
Have those problems been ironed out? Because, of course, as home gardeners, we can learn from the growers. So it would be good to know where the growers are at with this kind of transition.
Yes, I mean, I will be honest, growers is something that I am looking at the moment, because mainly I've always worked with the consumer, the home gardener, but I have spoken to a lot of growers, and some are having no problems at all, and some are really having problems. Now, I don't know, it's a difficult one, isn't it? It could be a mindset. Because you've got some growers growing similar plants. So we're talking hardy perennials. There's a company in North Devon who are doing really, really well, producing lovely, lovely plants. And they've been peat-free for quite a few years. And there's another company that's growing the same sort of plants that just moan about peat-free compost. And I think it is very much about consistency. Adjusting, and it is hard work, and growers don't make a fortune anyway. It's a tough industry,
but at some point they won't have the medium to work with at all, surely.
Absolutely. So I know they are working with bigger manufacturers to try and sort this out, but again, it's adding more and more costs onto what they do. And as we know, things like heating grow houses, things like that, it's hard at the moment. And so with the added costs of peat-free, it's mindset, but it is actually the practical level as well, getting it in, getting a good quality compost in that works for you and the way you've worked all your life. If you and your parents before you and your grandparents all ran a nursery using peat, it's very, you have got to change your ways of working.
Very true.
Indeed. I know of a couple of because I know you mentioned fungus gnats earlier on. I know of a couple of houseplant growers who are all peat free. I think Geb and Green are peat free, aren't they? And also Harriet's plants are peat free. And like what's with the fungus gnat issue? How does this come into play with peat free compost?
So we're seeing more fungus gnats. I mean, there is that thing is because so many more people are growing house plants. We're seeing more people are buying it. So it's kind of that law of averages, really. But fungus gnats live off fungus. They live off mold, and you get fungus from decaying wood matter. So if you're getting compost that is containing a lot more wood matter, then you are more likely to see more fungus gnats, and that is, unfortunately, one of the truths. It's not 100%. There, as I said, there is more people are using compost, so therefore you're seeing more issues. But it is that fungus gnats love a warm, moist, moldy environment, and it doesn't mean that they're coming from the manufacturer. They can be attracted to the compost bags within a garden centre, outside. All compost bags have little holes in them. Fungus gnats are tiny. They lay their eggs, and that's what happens. But there are things you can do to help combat it. I know companies are searching for that cure, putting things in the compost. But the last thing we want to do is kind of go down the environmental route and then start producing loads of insecticides to start killing off fungus gnats. That's not what we want to do. But the main thing, someone can do in their home is to let the compost dry out between waterings, because they're attracted to the moisture. So they lay their eggs and the larvae hatch, and then you get this cycle. The main thing is, the good news is they're not going to kill your houseplants, whatever you see on social media. Fungus gnats don't don't kill houseplants. The most they might do, if you've got a load of seedlings inside, they might munch the seedling roots, but that's very, very rare. They're just an annoyance, like a fruit fly.
So what they do, swatting around like
I know.
Like, where does that come from? Where's that?
I know. I've got them. I mean, you can use the sticky yellow traps. That helps monitor. You can use little pots with a bit of cider vinegar and a hole, with cling film and a hole that attracts them. But mainly, you want to break the life cycle. So what you want to do is do a thick layer of grit, very fine grit, on the top of your pots. Or I use the clay balls, the Leica balls, Hydra. Leica balls. So I use a lot of them. So it's just taking away the home. You want to stop them breeding, and they love warm, moist compost. And also, what I would recommend you do, if you're buying a special houseplant compost that's peat-free, if you can, open it up outside. Because if you bring it indoors, you open it up and out come a swarm of fungus gnats. That's not good. Open it up outside, tip it into like a little tub truck thing, a little bucket, and leave it overnight somewhere in a shed or just somewhere where it's dry. But give it a stir, give them a chance to dissipate, because you don't get the problem outside at all.
Well, you could as well use the lava light, which is one of our previous sponsors as well.
I was just about.
That would be cool.
Funny, I was just about to say that you can use volcanic lava. Yeah, definitely.
But Kate, while we're in the mood for name drops, actually, if you are going to go along to the garden centre, you need to plant up a hanging basket. Which peat-free would you choose off the garden centre benches?
Am I allowed to name names now?
I think you can name at least one.
So I would, and I'm not just saying that, I'll go for a Miracle Grow hanging basket moisture.
Okay.
But I would also go for Rocket Grow multi-purpose. Now, Rocket Grow use digestate, and I absolutely love their story, their sustainability story. It's totally circular. Rocket Grow are great, not as easy to find as Miracle Grow, but definitely but what you can do, you can get a multi-purpose, and then you can add a bit of coir into it. You can mix up a bit. Companies won't like me saying this, but you can mix and match a bit, I really would. But for hanging baskets, it's moisture. So something that's got a moisture control. It doesn't mean it's the white, that like you have in nappies although some people do use that. I mean, I've used those in the past. I've actually used in hanging baskets. I've used nappies, and I've also used sanitary towels as liners, because they really help.
That sounds very TikTok.
Oh God, doesn't it? But it works. I mean, it absolutely works. But don't buy the cheapest. For hanging baskets.
That's probably the best tip, actually, isn't it? So
I hate to say it. Don't buy. There's a reason it's cheap. There is a reason it's cheap. The prices aren't expensive because they want to get your money. It's because of, as I've said, all the years of research, the new machinery, and you want to know that you're buying from a company that has spent time doing this. I mean, there are smaller brands out there. There's Silver Grow, Malcourt, there's the ones that are using black and sheep's wool. They're great, and they are really expensive because the raw materials are in short supply. So a bigger company won't be able to make compost at scale using those ingredients because it's just not available. But they are really, really good. You just can't mass produce them. So that's another reason that, a lot of people don't realise that. Why can't everybody use sheep's wool? Well, you can't. There's not enough to go around. Why can't everyone use bracken? There's not enough to go around. And actually, I don't like using sheep's wool. I know it sounds silly, but when I've got a bag of compost, I like it to smell like compost and be brown. So that's, that is an important thing. People don't like if peat-free looks too different, they don't like it. It's kind of, we also garden with our eyes, don't we, as well, as our senses and our touch.
True.
And if it looks too light, you think, it can't be doing the job. It's not real. So I think green manure is really good for that green compost.
That's cool. No, I think that was a good question. I know that's we've named a few brands, but I think you gave us so much confidence in your knowledge of peat-free and what you've done over the years that I think we couldn't have finished the podcast without giving a few suggestions. So thank you very much.
Well, just do your research. Get to know your plants. Just love your garden. That's what I would say. Get to know your plants and just don't take it for granted. And feed. One thing I do want to say is get ready to feed that little bit earlier. A lot of people don't feed their plants. You really do need to feed your plants, especially those in containers. Most peat-free compost will contain added nutrients, but it has been shown that some plants use up potassium a bit more quickly. Yeah, is that right, Jess? You need to start feeding that little bit earlier. Just get ready to put on a liquid feed, seaweed feed, whatever your go-to feed is. Start feeding that a little bit earlier with peat-free compost.
Great tip. Thank you so much.
Top tip.
Compost Kate coming on the podcast to talk dirty.
Can I be peat-free princess?
You can be peat-free princess if you prefer, but you can still talk dirty as a princess.
So, thank you.
Where can our listeners find out more about you, Kate, and where can we follow your projects in horticulture and your podcast as well?
Yeah, so I run a podcast with a friend called Phil Wright, called The Underground Podcast. And that is where we talk mainly garden industry. But we do have all sorts of movers and shakers from the garden sector, including Mr. Plant Geek himself and Ellen Mary. We really want you to come and talk with us. But otherwise, I am gardeningguru.co.uk. That's me. And yeah, all sorts of things in the pipeline at the moment.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. It's been really good chatting with you.
And you, thank you.
Thank you. I think Michael's dropped off somewhere. He sort of disappeared. Have you noticed? Michael, are you there? Yeah.
I thought he was just really, really interested in what I had to say.
he's just like pressed pause or something. I don't know what's going on. But anyway.
I don't know.
Oh, no, there he is.
I'm totally here.
We can hear you, but we can't see you. Anyway. Thank you, Kate. Gardening Guru, go and check out Kate, and let's make the transition to peat-free compost. Thank you so much.
Yes, yeah. Do whatever I've said. Just do it. Just practice.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
It's so lovely to see you, Kate and Lucy. She Grows Veg. It's so exciting. Like, I know you've got loads of stuff coming up, but I'm just going to super quickly say, before we even get Michael on here, at the weekend I was at Malvern and we were talking, and someone in the audience of the Q&A was asking, like, what different veg they could grow, like what's different they could grow on the allotment. And I was with John Wheatley at the time, and we were both like, you need to go to She Grows Veg. As simple as that. That's all you need to do. And then when we realised, like, both of us knew you, we were doing it at every talk. We were literally like, have you said She Grows Veg? She Grows Veg. So you were mentioned a lot more.
That's good. I just like saying no commission or anything there. Genuine recommendations.
No commission. It was a genuine, like, yes, She Grows Veg. Go that way. And
John's amazing. You know, he's our mentor. So he's actually the one that talked us into doing Chelsea and Hampton. So
it's his fault.
He's brilliant.
Yeah, he's such a good guy.
Brilliant. He is such.
He's been around a long time, and he's so adaptable to the times and the changes as well, which I have so much respect for as well.
Yeah, he really is. He's such a huge advocate for what we're doing, and kind of quite, old guard horticulture. And he's been around forever, and he's so, kind of an RHS institution, but he is so 100% on board with what we're doing and what we're trying to get across. The boundaries we're trying to break, and he loves it all. It's amazing.
He's been such an incredible support, and he's actually growing a lot of the plants for our exhibits as well. And I think the thing I love about him the most, though, is he calls us young ladies.
Yeah,
which at the age of 40, we're both in our 40s, so it makes us feel good.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like, sometimes you can kind of be faced with old school horticulturalists.
And that's not always the story.
And that is not always the way, that it's difficult to make change, and actually be female sometimes too. But he is like, literally, there was a question time with all men, and he was like, I think Ellen should be there because we need some diversity. And that, and I just thought, this is cool. Do you know what I mean? All
really cool.
People out there who want to make change and move forward. So anyway, we all love John Wheatley. There you go.
We do. Very early in our journey, we were actually told that people didn't want open pollinated heirloom seeds by some very senior horticulturists.
Okay.
So, as a complete contrast to that, there was a lot of naysayers sort of thinking we were totally nuts for wanting to launch a seed company in the UK that was all about heirlooms. And so that was what we were faced with right at the beginning, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think we can all say that we have proved them wrong.
I think times have changed so much, and I think a lot of people are always just talking from an older hymn sheet, and they don't really update their feeling, or sometimes they're too proud to update what they think about stuff as well, you know.
I also think, you know, there aren't many horticultural brands out there that are talking to the younger demographics. So I geek out on data, right? This is where you'll probably roll your eyes and fall asleep. But, you know, half of the people we sell seeds to are under 35. So
really? Wow.
Yeah, we are speaking to, there are people of every other age as well, which is wonderful, certainly for everyone. But we are speaking to that young audience in a really effective way. And they are all over our YouTube videos because that's how they learn. And they love the QR codes, seed packets, and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, lack of jargon. I think it's like a demographic that the horticulture industry have kind of ruled out. So like, we'll get them when they grow up. But, you know, that's not going to happen yet. And,
or they just haven't known how to do it, or they've just tried the same old ways. And because I think there's a lot of assumption that everyone gardens in the same way, but that is not true. It's different across ages, cultures, demographics, and everything. And there is no one-fits-all approach at all.
And I think with food growing in particular, it's approached in a really different way. I think you have a lot of people out there that are interested in growing food that would not necessarily count themselves as interested in gardening or gardeners. But food, and they care about what they're eating and they care about what they're putting in their body, which is a huge concern among young people. I think you have this whole huge area of the market that isn't targeted by traditional gardening at all.
And there's also the environmental aspect, isn't there? The sustainability, you know, and the cost of living crisis, you know, food security. We all remember last summer, the supermarkets started running out of some veg, didn't they? And it really put people into a spin on social media. And so I think part of our messaging is kind of addressing that, and that people can build their own food security just by growing on their windowsills.
But aside from all that, kind of even on a less serious side, you guys have lifestyled it as well. And that is something that some of the other companies haven't done. Yeah. But you've made it look good and kind of, you know, Instagrammable, which always sounds like it sounds like a cheesy phrase, but it's very important these days. I mean, we should never underestimate that, you know? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the social media gardening crowd is kind of like the new gardening club. People don't go to the village once a month anymore.
It's a great community. Yeah.
Horticultural Latin, but essentially the same thing is happening. It's just happening in a different arena. People are still like sharing their knowledge, their experience, their fails as well, and supporting each other through stuff. It's like the biggest global gardening club ever, but it's kind of looked down on somewhat. And actually, we're really, really proud of our roots in social media. We've made a whole area of the stand that actually specifically acknowledges that that's where we came from. We've made the ultimate Insta moment on our Chelsea stand.
But I think what's so exciting is that the heads are turning, aren't they? So the traditional horticulturalists and the industry in the wider sense slightly poo-pooed Instagram and the social channels and all of that kind of stuff, but they're totally embracing it now. And you look at the RHS and what they're doing now, and they're working with all of us before, aren't they, in big ways, and it's actively being encouraged as part of the future of gardening and growing. And so I think that's changing, and we're really excited to be a part of that. Actually, it's really cool. I guess you guys must feel the same, don't you?
Well, we're excited that you're part of it, that's for sure. It's awesome.
Because we're kind of I guess Ella and I, we're kind of half old school in a way, because we've been knocking around a bit longer. I don't know. So we've kind of seen how things have changed a bit.
Don't make me feel old, Michael. I'm trying to fight middle age right now. And you just put me in another box.
But you're the pioneers, aren't you?
But we also, especially myself, I was in it since I was 18. So I've had to change with the times and see the times that they've changed. And I always find, like, I think, Ellen, you're the same. I kind of feel an in-between with, I knew it before the internet and I know it after the internet came. And so it's about different ways to communicate, because it's still about communicating in real life as well, and that's obviously a big part of what you guys will be doing at Chelsea, which is coming up as well. So
tell us on the bag, because you head off to Chelsea tomorrow. Obviously, this is out a few days later after we've recorded it, but pre-Chelsea. So tell us kind of like what's going on at Chelsea.
Right. Well, we are very excited because obviously we have not actually been selling seeds for that long. We launched the seed business in November, and we just as a punt thought, you know what, let's have a go. And with John's encouragement, we applied and got in, which is amazing. So we kind of have a core mission, which is to try and get as many people growing food as possible. We want to try and do that in two different ways. So one is to elevate grow your own beyond the kind of traditional homespun image that it generally gets. You kind of get quite a formulaic image with it, and you get that kind of village show on steroids at flower shows, or you get the traditional kind of English country kitchen garden, with veg in rows and a little greenhouse. So we wanted to do it something very different, and we wanted it to be aspirational in the way that the ornamental plants are aspirational at the show. And we also wanted to create a kind of closer connection with food, because although obviously it's food, you are growing food, there is this kind of disconnect between ingredients. Like chefs and cooks will go to a shop and buy their ingredients, and what we want them to do is see seeds as the route to getting and working with the best and most interesting ingredients. It's kind of our mission that we wanted to do. So we've
we've created, we've created a concept that we're calling Edimental, and we took our inspiration from the Renaissance painters' portrayal of fruit and veg. So you'll probably remember seeing those absolutely stunning oil paintings of fruit and veg, opulent, pouring off a table with gold goblets and in beautiful frames. And so that's the inspiration. So we've got a huge exhibit. It's 9 by 3 meters in the Great Pavilion. And inside that exhibit, we've got tiering with a huge black background with 9 stunning antique gilt frames. And inside each of the frames is a curation of beautiful veg. And so we're working with quite a famous florist, Hazel Gardner, who's amazing. She does lots of high profile work, and she's going to help us. So we could throw something together, but she's going to take it to the next level for us and make it very pretty and very beautiful.
Make sure it lasts.
A week.
Yeah, wow.
So in each frame you will see a collection of veg, sort of color themed. So you'll have one that's red, one that's pink, one that's yellow.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
There'll be seeds, everything from seed all the way through to mature plants or harvested veg. So you see the whole life cycle. And then, as Lucy said, we're really proud of the Instagram heritage that we have. So we've got a life-size, ginormous frame as well on one side that's going to be decorated with beautiful veg. People can put a veg crown on and have their photo taken in. So it's the Instagram.
Oh, so cool.
So
it's not very often there. It's not very often the kind of displays at Chelsea are interactive as well. So
so
very nice.
It's slightly cheesy, but we want people to become part of the art. And then it's really cool. And then they're letting us sell our seeds as well, which is really cool. So we'll meet all these people, and they can buy what they see basically on the exhibit, which is really exciting for us.
Even Chelsea is changing. How about that?
Yeah, I have to say it's been amazing. The RHS was so on board right from the beginning. It's another one of those things, you apply, and we all know that Chelsea's not easy to get into, and there are people that have applied for years, and it's really tough. So we kind of didn't know how it was going to go when we put the application in, but they have been so incredibly supportive as well. I think that's one of the things that we've really noticed since we've launched this business is how much support we have received from big parts of the industry. They're really loving that we're trying to do something a bit different. And it's a lovely thing.
And we're getting lots of fantastic feedback as well from people that really matter to us. I think when you talk about an idea, either the Chelsea idea or the concept of the business as a whole, there were the naysayers at the beginning, but people can't quite imagine it. And now obviously we've live, people can see it, breathe it, see the beautiful photography, all of that stuff. The feedback is overwhelmingly positive. Really, really.
This is going to go down so well at Chelsea. I absolutely know it. I'm really looking forward to it.
Terrified about judging. I don't know how the judges will take it.
Yeah,
it's very different.
At Chelsea, they judge floristry with one team of judges, and they judge what they call the nurseries, which we fall into that bracket with another team of judges. We created something that is half nursery, half floristry. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that within their judging matrix, and
that's brilliant. Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's going to go down well. Like, that's challenging them as well, and how they do things, because there's crossovers all of the time in horticulture. So just saying,
and crossovers are healthy,
or just the floristry, or just this isn't really relevant always either. Can I just say, I'm at Michael's at the moment. I'm sitting here thinking, what on earth is that on the wall? And then I realised, like, if you have plants at home, this here is what you end up with. Can you see it? It's obviously where you've sprayed plants. So you've got
I can't see.
And then the wall is like covered in like water sprays.
Oh, that's so cool.
No, that's like that. If you are a plants person, this is literally what you end up with, because you're just like spraying plants.
Misty.
I'm more excited about my Lego flowers.
I was like, what is that? Your Lego flowers. They're very cool.
She hasn't noticed the difference.
Where are you at the moment?
Millbrook Garden Centre in Kent.
Right.
We got a little workshop day for Glee Concept Store, where they get teams from different garden centres to then kind of build like a pretend garden centre display at Glee in September. So it was really cool, and all the teams are here, and we're doing some briefings, and I'm doing some trend kind of talks as well. So yeah, it's really cool.
How do people feel about the change of time of year? Because that's quite a big deal, isn't it?
To be honest, it changed from September to June 3 or 4 years ago, and now people are kind of pleased that it's gone back to September, because people don't like change. And it kind of fits in a lot easier with different seasons. And certainly for me, I do a lot of industry work, and there's a lot that happens in June, so this is nice, and it spreads it out a bit more as well. So
yeah, because it's pretty intense this time of year.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. But you ladies had the cameras in as well. Have you done a little bit of filming with this?
Yeah. So
where are we going to see you? Where are we going to see you popping up?
So we've actually, and we're still kind of pinching ourselves a little bit. We have a feature on us and everything that we've been doing and our road to Chelsea in the launch show for Chelsea on Sunday.
I knew it.
So the day before press day. So 6:15, BBC One, everyone, tune in and you can see our road to Chelsea. It's very, very exciting.
Yeah, they filmed in our offices. They filmed us packing orders. We have a trial garden where we try to grow everything and farm seeds. So they filmed there. They did a mock-up day with us, didn't they?
Yeah.
With the Hazel, our florist.
And hopefully Raymond wants to make a little bit of an appearance, because he's going to be on stand the next day cooking. So yeah, the whole thing with Chelsea has been one long roller coaster of, I can't actually believe this is happening.
Quite surreal.
I still can't really believe that tomorrow we're going to get in the car and go, and it's actually all going to happen. Stuff that we've been working towards, but
you ladies have made it happen.
Yeah,
it's
amazing. You made this happen.
You're so inspirational. Honestly, you built a whole business. You're at Chelsea trial garden. We still have to visit your new gaff, by the way.
You do.
Yeah.
That's now the trial and seed farm. So it's had a little change of use, but you've got to come and visit.
Yeah, you'd be
amazing.
Chop down some nettles while you're there. Yeah,
of course. We can cook with those. Because we interviewed you at. We interviewed Lucy at our old place, didn't we? Do you remember?
We did, yeah. That was quite a few years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Things have moved fast. I think I've been on with you guys. This is the third time, and every time it's just things have snowballed so much. But I feel like it's all been working towards this point. This is where it's leading. The journey's all been about a journey of discovery with heirloom plant, and this is where it's come. Like, Kate was my final piece of the puzzle. Bless her.
It's lovely.
That's brilliant.
You met. Actually, just quickly tell our listeners where you met and how you got together as business.
Yeah, we basically both sort of slightly on the side of everything else we were doing. We took a course at Beth Chatto Gardens, which is in Essex, very famous, which we love. And it was a year studying to be garden designers. And at the time, I was still in my marketing career, which I was doing for 25 years. And Lucy was starting to grow and was evolving her career from jewellery to growing and started her Instagram profile. And we rocked up week one, sat next to each other, and then sat next to each other all year. We'd never moved.
That's so cool.
Wow. Have some fun. And so that was like 6-7 years ago. And so we stayed in touch. Lucy sort of built up the incredible Instagram following and her photography and stuff. And you just got a sense, well, you were getting actual feedback from people that they want these rare seeds that Lucy was growing in her garden. She was doing all these incredible things. They were like, where do I get that seed?
Like, you can't.
And she's like, you can't. And so she had this, it's all the gardening puns come out, don't they? A sort of a germ of an idea. A seed company was a good idea, but just you didn't have the commercial background, did you?
No.
On how on earth to get it off the ground. So Lucy got a show garden at Gardeners World Live last year, which was amazing. It was fully edible and phenomenal. And she put a shout out on Instagram, which I happened to see, and obviously we were in touch anyway. And she just said, I need some help. And I said, well, I'll take some days off work and come and help you. So we met up for coffee, and she said, oh, God, I want to start a business. And I said, oh, God, I hate my job. And about 2 weeks later, I quit.
That was it.
So I ditched the 25 years in marketing, and we've got this real sort of yin-yang sort of company dynamic. Lucy is the amazing creator. She does all the growing, she does all the photography, a lot of the ideas and the seed hunting, and I do all of the running of the business and the operations, but also some of the creative too. And we are the yin and yang of the seed industry.
We are.
But we're together.
It's really important, if you're going to do something like we've done, to understand where your skills lie and understand where they are missing and where you need help. And I think either of us trying to do this alone, it wouldn't work. We need skills that we both have, and together we have a formidable set of skills. But I think it's also that shared passion. So we are obviously, we're both qualified in garden design. We are both growers. I grow all of my veg for my family. So we have this innate passion for growing, and so that's the foundation, if you like, and then we've got all these skill sets that are bringing it together on top of that. So needless to say, we've gone absolutely ballistic on the marketing and had the leg up.
I hadn't noticed.
Anywhere? No. Big fail on my part there. But what a dream, as a marketeer, it's an absolute dream to have the kind of following that Lucy already had. There was all that, it's like a springboard for a business, isn't it?
And to deal with such a beautiful product as well, it's a product we're passionate about, so it kind of makes it fun for all of us. And the photography, honestly,
well, it's sexy veg, isn't it?
We use the term veg porn quite a lot in this office. I would say.
That should be a hashtag. Is that a hashtag?
It is a hashtag. I suspect if you Google it, all sorts of other stuff.
You never quite
know. I know. But I feel like we have cornered the market in veg porn. But I would hope as well that the story kind of gives confidence to other people who have taken the decision to really build a social media following as well, because I think you get to a point, my experience certainly was, you get to a point, you've built a following, you feel like you've got something there, but it's, realistically, social media marketing is it's very difficult to earn money from. People seeing ads on social media. So what do you do with this following? How do you and you meet all these interesting people, and you learn so much, and you end up as kind of an expert in your field, but what do you do with it? So I hope that my story and our story and what we've built out of all the work that I've been doing through social media on all these years and all the experience that I've had gives people hope that actually you can build something really tangible from that experience. It is worthwhile.
That's so true. Yeah. If you think about it, we've turned the sort of startup dynamic on its head. That ordinarily a brand starts and then they start building their social media, whereas we did social media first.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And then the other way around, the company. And actually, it's an interesting model. If you take the time to build up that social media following, you've got a good idea. And our business is absolutely grounded again in me being the geek that I am. I did the market research. So Lucy had an idea that there was some demand there for heirloom seeds,
and she proved it.
I found the numbers, I found the audiences, and who we should be speaking to, and how we should be. And all
you
of that
can tell, even just sitting here on Zoom recording this, how well you two get on. You literally bounce.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's lovely.
We do have a good time. You have to get on. You do.
Oh God,
Bloody hard
time
work
together.
as well. We have worked our asses off for the last year. We really, really have. And I don't think of us would have got through if we hadn't had each other. Like we just keep each other going, you know, through the laughs, through the tears. Like it's hard. So if we were doing it alone, apart from, you know, the skill set being divided, just emotionally, it would be really, really tough.
Yeah, you need that support system. But I'll tell you, this is a very rewarding thing all round, but one of the things I particularly love is we now have 8 women that work for us. We're not discriminating against men. It just so happens that women have been sort of gravitating towards us. And so we've got an incredible team around, you know, in just 6 months, we've needed 8 additional people. They're helping with everything from sort of packing to social media to trial garden, all of that kind of stuff. And that is a source of great pride, because we have people who have had mental health issues, someone who, you know, hadn't worked for a long time, and we're boosting her confidence up and she's absolutely flying. And we've got a young person who worked in a cafe and wants a career. And so we've got all these women, different stories that we're just nurturing alongside the seed business that we own. And that for me is massively rewarding.
That's amazing.
Brilliant.
Bonus of being able to build a business and employ people, you know, and be a nurturing, you know, company, just like you're nurturing your seedlings, you're nurturing your people too. On that note, I am actually sowing a couple of your seeds. I've sown some beetroot and some amaranth, but I cannot remember what one.
They're all good, so you can't go wrong.
Yeah, they're all good. But I write everything down because I'm terrible at remembering like varieties. I write them down, and then when they grow, I revert back to my little list so I know what's what. So yes. Where can listeners find you? So apart from our RHS Chelsea Flower Show, of course,
which will be tomorrow when this podcast goes out. So I'm pretty excited about seeing you there.
I know, I'm getting She Grows Veg basically everywhere. So on all major social media platforms except X, because he wants to get involved with that. But particularly Instagram, and then shegrowsveg.com. We've got blogs and help and recipes and everything that you could possibly need to fill your life with veggies.
Perfect. Healthy, fun, heirloom veggies.
All the colours of the rainbow.
Yeah, all the colours of the rainbow, yes. Thank you so much. I know you're super busy at the moment getting ready to go off to Chelsea, but we're really looking forward to seeing you on Monday. We will make a dash.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
We want to wear the veg flower crown before anyone else.
Yes, we need to get you in the frame.
Yeah, totally. Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
Thank you
Good
so
to see
much.
you girls.
Yeah, really good to see you.
See you in a few days.
Yeah, definitely. Bye. Good luck.
Bye.
The tranquil, soothing, natural sound of flowing water. Listening to it has been shown to lower your heart rate and blood pressure and gently relax your whole body. Combining the magical sound of cascading water with the beauty of plants, Hydria Life now enable you to enjoy these same health and well-being benefits at home or in the garden. Get 10% off their rechargeable Hydria fountain at hydrialife.com when you quote code PLANT24 on ordering. That's PLANT24 on ordering.
The music for the Plant-Based podcast is part of the song Grow by Mikey James, and our editor is Gareth Patch of Semi Echo.